Eubanks, Lester's father. Mose had told him an inmate he knew had painted it from a photograph. The signature in the corner of the painting reads, D. Hale.
But I didn't see him paint it. You know, the kid that took credit for it, but I knew him personally. Him and Mose were like this, so I have no idea as to the authenticity.
You think Lester could have painted that?
I don't know. I don't know.
It turns out the U.S. Marshals had the same question. When we come back, a painting yields a clue they were not expecting, sending the manhunt for Lester Eubanks in a new direction.
Hey everyone, it's ABC's Paula Ferris. I'm the host of Journeys of Faith. As you know all too well, we are in an election year. So on this season, we're talking to 2020 presidential candidates and other political figures about how their faith and religion influence their person and their politics.
Before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me and how you treat other people.
You can call God by many different names, but we are worshiping the same God.
So check out Journeys of Faith wherever you're listening now.
It was late summer 2019, and I was seated in a rental car with Alex Hosenball in a leafy suburb of Columbus, Ohio. We had spent the day shadowing Deputy U.S. Marshal David Seiler, and now we were hanging back as he knocked on the door of the home of Reverend James Banks. On a past visit to this house, Seiler had also noticed an unusual painting, just as we had, and wondered if Lester could be the artist. Seiler spoke with us as he was preparing to visit the Banks house to take a closer look.
So the fact that Mose gave this person a beautiful painting, and this painting is something that we can use to, one, identify who created the painting. And if we do identify, let's say it's Lester, well, if he created that piece of art in 2008, well, that could get us obviously even closer to where our bad guy is at.
If Lester were the artist, it would offer the first solid proof that he and his father had stayed in contact while he was on the run. And maybe more significantly, the canvas could offer clues to Lester's whereabouts at the time it was painted. The date in the corner says 2008. There could be clues all over that painting, right? In terms of where the canvas was purchased or...
All types of clues. All types of clues could be all over that painting. DNA, fingerprints, whatever somebody wrote on the back, whatever somebody, whoever created that, DNA, fingerprints are all over it. So with that, with those two elements alone, we can identify who created that painting.
On this quiet residential street, we watched as Seiler and his partner knocked on the door and were welcomed into the home of James Banks. Then we waited. After about 20 minutes, the front door opened again, and the marshals emerged. Holy smoke, they just got the painting. Seiler was carrying it, wrapped in a blanket, and he placed it gently in the back of his car. A few minutes later, Alex and I spoke with him at a nearby parking lot. Seiler said James Banks was more than happy to help.
He's a really good man. I asked, hey, the painting that he received from Mose Eubanks, can I take it, analyze it, see if there's fingerprints, or see if the fact that there's some kind of DNA on there? And they were more than willing. Absolutely, here you go. There is a name on the painting which we're going to try to identify as a possibility. So they were more than willing to provide us with the painting, and we'll see where that leads us.
And did he give you the name of who he thought the artist was?
He did. He provided a name, a former inmate of the state of Ohio. So we're going to follow up and see if we can identify who that guy is.
So this is a good day.
It's a great day.
I was curious just what exactly a forensic team could do to determine whether Lester had painted it. I drove up to Baltimore to meet with Charles Tumosa. For years, he had headed the forensic lab for the Philadelphia police and then analyzed art for the Smithsonian, detecting forgeries and tracing artifacts. Now he's a criminology professor at the University of Baltimore. I showed him a photograph I had taken of it when I was still in James Banks's house.
Yeah, I'd have to blow that up. That's kind of interesting. That's actually a pretty good painting.
Well, people say that he was intrigued. I asked him, what could we learn from a painting?
I would look at where it was bought. I would look at there should be some indication on the canvas where it was purchased. Okay. That would give some indication as to, obviously, location. On the back, usually there's a firm, either the firm that made it or the firm that sold it.
That made the canvas. He wanted to know if it was painted with oil.
A lot of artists use their fingers. And if there's a fingerprint on that thing, it's as good as gold.
And if Lester handled the painting, maybe even DNA.
I was going to ask you that. What about skin cells or...
That's a possibility. Okay, again, it depends on how many people handle it.
Does the paint itself hold on to any of that stuff? Does it get like you think like a mosquito in amber or whatever? Does a skin cell get trapped in the wet paint in some way?
Yeah, if you could find it, if nobody's handled it or messed with it in some way. Yeah, I would. If I could see it, if I saw a thumbprint, I might go with that. Sure, why not?
But he said the most important first step was to try and determine if there was indeed a person who matched the signature in the bottom corner of the painting, a D. Hale. If we could identify him, the professor said, maybe he could answer the most important question. Was D. Hale really Lester Eubanks? With the mystery figure D. Hale added to his whiteboard, Seiler continued to expand his search for relatives of Lester's who might know more and be unafraid to talk. The U.S. Marshals had offered a $25,000 reward for information about Lester, and the potential windfall figured prominently into Seiler's conversations with Lester's family. Still, this was no easy task, as Seiler told me over the phone.
You really spent a lot of time trying to understand the dimensions of the Eubanks family. It's not an easy family to understand, I guess.
This is a rather large family. Spans several states, spans across the country. And the ability to get one of those individuals to help us out, it hasn't been successful in 45 years. And in fact,
Seiler even began to sense a pattern when he interviewed relatives of Lester's. It was as if they were expecting him, and they knew just what to say and what not to say. He wondered if some of them might be alerting others that he was on the hunt.
It seems wherever we are, they're quick to know. They pass the information quickly that the marshals are in the area doing interviews.
Over the summer, though, Seiler was starting to see cracks in that network. He began speaking with one man in particular who had alleged that years ago in the 60s, Lester met his mother in church, pulled her into an alley, and raped her. The man believes he was the product of that alleged assault. This all happened before the murder of Mary Ellen, and later, after Lester was sent off to prison, the Eubanks family began reaching out to him when he was still just a boy. I wanted to meet this man myself, but he was very difficult to get a hold of. At one point, we had agreed to meet at a grocery store near his house, but he never showed up. A few weeks later, we decided to try again, this time at a hotel. He arrived wearing sunglasses and a Pittsburgh Steelers hat. Our agreement was that we wouldn't use his name and we would disguise his voice. He said he remains fearful of the Eubanks family. Talking about Lester to strangers is a risk.
We're not going to use your name, but we'll have to figure out how to refer to you. We'll just call you Sir. How about that?
That sure works.
All right.
I asked the man When did he first become aware that his biological father might be Lester Eubanks? He said Lester's father, Mose, brought it up frequently from the time he was a boy.
I do recall him saying, "You know who your father is?" I said, "Yeah, I know who my father is. My family told me, you know, Lester Eubanks."
And what did that mean to you? Did you have a sense of who he was or where he was?
I had no idea. I had no sense of where he was or who he was.
The Eubanks family never discussed with this man whether they believed Lester had assaulted his mother. There was clearly some distance between him and the Eubanks family, but they continued to reach out. He said one of Lester's relatives even occasionally floated the idea he might one day meet his biological father.
She said she would always say, "Well, you'll meet him sometime or another."
He said he learned about Lester mostly from his mother. She was always reluctant to talk about him and almost never talked about what Lester had done to her. An attack that had apparently occurred in 1964, right behind the church, when she was just a teenager.
I mean, like I said, I hate the fact that what he did to my mother, you know, I really do.
I asked him what he would say to Lester if he happened to be listening to this, and I was struck by the contrast to the response I got to this same question from Darrell Banks Jr., the architect in Vietnam who considered Lester a kind of mentor. When I talked to Darrell, he didn't blame Lester for embarking on his flight from justice or call for him to return. But this man felt differently. He said he would advise Lester to stop running.
All I can tell him is, you know, I suggest you just give up and turn yourself in. You know.
It was interesting to meet him, this man who seemed to have such a tangible connection to Lester, but he didn't appear to know anything that would help the marshals catch Lester. If there were members of the family who knew more, they still weren't talking. And yet, those pursuing Lester were more convinced than ever they needed someone from within that tight-lipped circle, someone to answer the most basic questions about Lester's life on the run. And some of those answers would come from a surprising place. There was one additional avenue we hadn't explored in the search for Lester Eubanks: DNA. And if this man was indeed the biological son of Lester Eubanks, I began to wonder if his DNA could play a role in catching his father.
Next time, we find out if the man we met really is Lester's biological son, and see if his DNA will help us find other people related to Lester, people who were born during his time on the run.
That takes care of Ancestry.com, and that's 4 samples.
And the sister of the young girl killed by Lester is surprised by an outpouring of support. We've compiled photos of Lester Eubanks, including an age progression sketch showing what the U.S. Marshals believe he may look like today on abcnews.com/thisman. You can also find a lot of additional content on the case there, and we'll be updating the page as news warrants. If you have seen Lester Eubanks or have any information about his whereabouts, you can provide your tip directly to the U.S. Marshals at 1-866-4-WANTED. That's 1-866-4926833. If you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast and give us a rating and a review. Have You Seen This Man is a production of the ABC News Investigative Unit and ABC Audio. Written and reported by Senior Investigative Producer Matthew Moss. Additional reporting by producer Alex Hosenball and Associate Producer Jinsol Jung. Production by Susie Liu. Special thanks to Josh Cohan, Lauren Efron, and Stacia Deshishku. Cindy Galley is our Chief of Investigative Projects. Chris Vlasto is Senior Executive Producer. I'm Sunny Hostin.